Okay, hello everyone. This is Lisa Ruggiero. I'm a project assistant here at the Environmental Finance Center at Syracuse University. On behalf of the EFCN network, I would like to welcome you to this webinar. It is an asset management workshop series interest meeting, and I'm going to be providing some technical support for today's session. Our format today is a little different from traditional webinars, where usually all attendees are kept on mute for the duration of the webinar, and that's just to minimize background noise. But because today's session is meant to be more interactive, it is our intention to unmute you when you have indicated you would like to speak or ask a question. So first, I'd like you to take a look at the audio section of your control panel. You'll see there are two options for your audio connection today. One is going to be via your phone, and another is via your computer's microphone and speakers. And before you click anything else, just hear me out. So you should connect via your computer's mic and speakers only if you're confident in your microphone's connectivity and sound quality. Please keep in mind that just because you're able to hear us through your computer speakers, you may not have a microphone that is able to pick up your voice connected as well. And for that reason, we do recommend that you connect via telephone. And please keep in mind there are three things you must enter when prompted. One, of course, is the phone number, which all of this information is displayed after selecting the telephone option. So you'll enter the phone number, then the access code, and then the audio PIN. And the key here is the audio PIN, because without it, we will not be able to unmute you to speak. So in other words, without entering your unique audio PIN, you'll be able to hear us, but we will not be able to hear you. If you're having trouble finding what your audio PIN is, just type me a note in the questions panel and I'll be able to provide further instruction there. So during the portion of the webinar where we are soliciting feedback and questions from you, you can feel free to type us a message in the questions section to let us know you'd like to speak, or you can raise your hand by clicking on the yellow hand icon. And of course, if all else fails and we're unable to unmute you and hear you, you can just type in your question and we'll read it out loud for you to the group. And before we get started, I just want to do a quick sound check. Dawn, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I can hear you, Dawn, but it's very faint.
Okay, is that better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay,
and
thank you.
How about Heather?
Yes, hello, I'm here.
Great, you're loud and clear. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Heather Himmelberger. Heather is the director at the Southwest Environmental Finance Center at the University of New Mexico. Take it away, Heather.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. Are we going to do the sharing?
Yes, let me
share my screen.
Yes.
Okay. All right, we're just about there. Okay. All right, well, what we're going to do today is a couple of things. Hang on one second. I'm getting some feedback. I don't know if other people are getting that feedback, but I'm getting like a feedback. Well, hopefully everybody else is okay. Lisa, can you tell me if you're getting an echo on your end?
I am not getting an echo on my end. Are your speakers on your other computer muted as well?
Yes, they are turned off, so I don't know what's going on. All right, well, we'll go ahead as long as nobody else is getting the echo. I think we'll be okay. What we're going to do today is we have two short presentations, and one is just an introduction to asset management. I just want to make sure that everybody has the sort of the same idea of what asset management is all about, because I know it can mean slightly different things to different people, and I just want to kind of make sure we're all on the same page about what asset management means to us and what we're going to do. And then the second thing that I'll present is the way in which we're going to do this particular project in South Dakota using something called the performance-based training method, and I'd like to explain what that method is all about. And then after that, we'll be able to have an opportunity to answer your questions that you might have about this process. So with that, I'll just go quickly through our introduction to asset management. Again, this is going to be a relatively short introduction just to kind of make sure we're all on the same page about asset management. And I do want to mention that this is part of a project that's funded by the Environmental Protection Agency. And it's called, we call it Smart Management for Small Water Systems. And our particular project for the Environmental Finance Center Network was to focus on managerial and financial capacity assistance. And we had 6 basic areas that we were working in: asset management, water loss, water system collaboration, fiscal planning and rate setting, energy management, funding coordination. And then we offered an extra workshop in each region around the country that we called managerial and financial leadership. So our project was essentially dealing with those topic areas. There is a website for our project, and it's efcnetwork.org, and there's a lot of really good resource information there if you want to peruse that at a later time. So kind of all of the information about this particular project you can find at that website. So back to asset management. Management decisions can be very complicated for water utilities, and part of the problem is we have limited funding. There's not very much money coming into our water systems from our customers or state or federal sources. We have aging infrastructure, and we have increasing regulations. So there's a lot of things that we have to do, a lot of demands for the money, and it's really necessary to figure out how are you going to prioritize how to spend those limited dollars. How are you going to choose what to do? So asset management really helps you know how and where to spend your money, helps you improve decision making, and the more formal definition is maintaining a desired level of service at the lowest life cycle cost. So we're trying to say how can you best operate your facility to run at the overall lowest life cycle cost while still providing what your customers want. So there are 5 core components to asset management, the first being the current state of the assets, the second, the level of service, the third is criticality, the fourth is life cycle costing, and the fifth is funding. So let's just spend a moment going through what each of these components are. The first one, the current state of the assets, is where we get into what assets do you actually own in your facility, where are they located, what condition are they in, how much longer do you think they can remain in service, and how much would it cost you to replace them? So we're talking about inventorying your assets, coming up with that list of, what physical things make up your system. And the reason we want to do this is because it becomes very difficult to effectively manage your utility if you don't know what it is you're trying to manage. This component is really the most straightforward component, not necessarily the least time-consuming, but it's very straightforward. We're just talking about kind of inventorying up what you have. The second component is level of service. In this component, what we want to remind ourselves is that first and foremost, water utilities are customer service businesses. You're really there to serve the customers that you're providing water for. So the level of service is going to define how you will operate the utility, what your goals are, so that you know what it is you want your utilities to provide, because it becomes very difficult to manage your utility effectively if you don't know what it is you're trying to do with them. I call this the most underappreciated component because a lot of people don't like to set goals, they don't like this process, but it really can help change the way you think about what you do and why you do it when you set those goals and then you monitor whether or not you can meet the goals. The third component is criticality, and this is where we get into which pieces of your water utility are more important to you than others, which pieces are going to be more important to the sustained operation of your utility. So we would look at probability of failure, what's the likelihood that an asset's going to fail, and what's the consequence if it actually does. So any asset that ends up in this box up here is going to be an asset that's highly critical to you, and any asset down here is going to be a very low criticality asset. These assets aren't likely to fail, and even if they do, the consequences aren't that great. And up here, they are likely to fail, and the consequences, if they do, are pretty serious. So this helps us decide how to spend our money, because we obviously want to spend more money on assets that fall in the high risk than we do in the low risk category. So this one helps us have a greater impact with our limited dollars because now we can know which assets are critical. And I think of this as kind of the heart and soul of asset management. It's really like what asset management is kind of based on and how we are able to spread our limited dollars around in a very effective manner. The fourth component is life cycle costing. And this is where we take a look at the difference between just looking at a capital cost of something and comparing it to the capital cost of something else, and we get into the overall life cycle cost. And we look at all of the costs that will go into that asset, the operation and maintenance, the rehab, repairs, all of those things that will be spent on our assets over time, so that now we can compare the life cycle cost of one asset to another instead of just the capital cost of one asset to another. And you might think about, well, how would that change or impact what you choose to do? If you're comparing a life cycle cost instead of a capital cost only, how might that impact what you choose to do? Maybe you would end up with a higher capital cost item that has a much lower operation and maintenance cost, or something like that, where you can actually make different decisions about what to install based on the life cycle cost. And without consideration of the life cycle, you can't really get the maximum life out of your assets or achieve a really cost-effective operation. So this component is really where the greatest potential for cost savings kind of comes into the process. And finally, the fifth component is a long-term funding. So we would want to look at from, what are our day-to-day expenses, and then what are our capital expenditures, those long-term things that we have to do. And so for our day-to-day expenses, we would look at money from customers, rates, fees, fines, taxes, whatever you do to get money from your customers, that's what's going to pay your day-to-day stuff. And then you're going to get money from your customers or state or federal sources to deal with that capital portion of your operation. And then you kind of want to look at, what do I need for the next 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years down the road? And obviously you're guessing when you get out 50 and 100 years, but it helps you think about, when are my really big projects coming up? When am I going to have to do a lot of capital stuff, so that you can plan and prepare. Because it's really hard to properly prepare for the future if you don't know how much money you're going to need now and later. And so this is really the key to implementation. This is where you get the money that allows you to do what it is you wanted to do in the first several components. So I think now we're going to open it up to a couple of poll questions just to kind of get a feel for how much asset management experience you have had in terms of training and implementation. So Lisa, if you would open our first poll question about whether folks have been to asset management training. Okay, so the first poll question says, I have attended the following asset management trainings in the past. And it's only going to allow you to pick one. So if you've done a CUPS training or EPA's Asset Management for Large System training, this was the training that Steve Albee and his group were putting on at EPA for a couple of years. If you've attended both A and B, select an answer. If you've attended a different training that was neither A or B, select D. And if you've not ever attended an asset management training in the past, go ahead and select E. So that would be, maybe this is pretty new to you or you haven't actually been in a training before. So if you take a moment and just click in your answer and then hit submit, that would be great. Okay, so we've had a few people that have attended CUPS training. A few people have attended other, but many of you have not attended asset management training in the past. And that's quite all right if you haven't. It will not affect your ability to do this course. We were just kind of trying to get a handle on where people are right now. All right, I think we have another poll question that talks about implementing asset management in your facility. So this is a question to kind of get at, have you actually had the opportunity to implement asset management practices, based on your trainings or anything else? Have you had a chance to actually put any of it in practice? So if you've done your inventory of your assets, or you've set level of service goals, or you've done a criticality analysis, or anything like that, where you've actually been able to implement asset management, go ahead and select yes. If you haven't had a chance to do that, select no. Or if you haven't had the opportunity because you really didn't attend asset management training in the past, you can select the last option at the bottom. Okay, so we had about 25% of the people that have had a chance to implement something, 8% no, and 67% haven't yet been at training. So, okay, well, we appreciate your responses to the poll question. And now we'll move on to talking more about the performance-based training process that we're going to use for this particular project. And this is a little bit different process than what you might typically have attended in the past in terms of training in general. If anybody has ever done the area-wide optimization program, which is primarily for surface water treatment systems, and it's a performance-based approach that tries to help you optimize how your surface water treatment system operates. Well, we've adapted the performance-based training part of that AWOP training and use it in an asset management setting. And what we've taken from that is really trying to focus on the application of the training. So you have some classroom components, but we really focus in on how do you apply that training when you get back to your facility. We also have a group dynamic. We want to allow for peer-to-peer interaction and learning, so everybody who's in the group training gets to learn from everybody else, and that's a really good component to the training. And then also it gives you a network of support so that you can get support from your other peers who are attending training, as well as the folks like us that are putting the training on. So it helps build that network of support, not just for this performance-based training period, but also into the future. So how does this actually work? The initial part of the meeting is you're going to have a presentation from everybody who attends the training. So each water system would present whatever it was that we assigned for you to do at your own utility. You would make a presentation about, what did you actually do? What kind of issues came up? Did you have challenges? What were your successes? So everybody gets a chance to kind of just talk about what they did. And it can be as formal or informal a presentation as you want. And there's some pictures there from the past of people that have been to training and their presentations. And you can see some people had handouts, some people just talked, some people had a PowerPoint. It's really up to the individual person how you want to present your information and make that presentation. But that will sort of start off the meeting. That'll tie it to the previous meeting, and that'll start us off. And then we'll talk about a particular area of asset management, and we'll focus in on one particular topic for that meeting. So we won't cover the entire asset management arena at each meeting. We'll focus in on one very specific component that you can take back to your own facilities. And then we'll also have a presentation by somebody in the group who can present maybe something they've done in that particular area or challenges they faced, to try to get each group to kind of talk about one of the topic areas. So we'll kind of work with you to figure out which system should present. So for example, this particular picture is somebody who presented on the funding topic. So we had talked about funding in general, and then we had this particular system talk about how they've done funding at their particular utility, and they were able to share some of their experience, both positive and negative, in terms of challenges they faced, and then the group was able to ask questions and find out information about how they did what they did. Then we'll have then we'll have a group activity that again will relate to the topic. You'll get a chance to work with your peers and work on an issue directly related to the topic at hand. And then we'll assign what we call our asset management applied activity, and this would be an activity that you would do at your own facility. So it will ask you to do something back at your utility, and then that would be the basis for what we present at the beginning of the next meeting. The project partners on this particular one are, of course, the Southwest Environmental Finance Center. We're doing the project delivery, and then the Environmental Finance Center Network is going to be providing project support. We'd also like to recognize the state of South Dakota and the South Dakota Rural Water Association, who will both be very helpful in terms of supporting this project, and South Dakota Rural Water in hosting the meetings. And then, of course, there'll be participating water systems, and then EPA, EPA, who's the project sponsor. They won't be at the meetings, but they are the ones who are funding this project. Some of the prior participants have really liked the learning environment and the structure of the meetings. They like having that opportunity to talk to others and learn from each other in the room. They liked the group exercises and the opportunity to work with people from other water utilities. They enjoyed the networking aspect, felt that they had been able to learn a lot from each other. So, you know, when people were presenting things at the beginning of the meeting, there was often a lot of dialogue that would occur and say, oh, hey, that sounds like a really great idea. I'd love to, you know, implement that at my own facility. What would it take to do that? So there's a lot of opportunity to borrow from each other. And that group actually wanted to continue to coordinate with each other. So you may find out that you want to have like a long-term opportunity to coordinate. You may want to get together via phone or web or in person on some periodic basis after the project is over, so you can continue to work together and share experiences. The basis for the activities that we'll be doing is the AM Can Work tool. It was developed by us, but it was funded by the Kansas Department of Health and Environment. It's an asset management manual that kind of is intended to be like a self-help tool that can guide you through the process, and we will make sure that you all get a copy of this tool so that you have it as a sort of a background reference material for the course. The participants in this program will be water systems in South Dakota who are interested in asset management, would like to implement asset management, and have a commitment to participating in all the workshops. We really would like folks to commit, you know, as much as possible to come to each of the workshops, because you won't get the whole big picture if you only come to one workshop or two workshops. We really want to have people who are sort of interested in coming and really learning about all the aspects of asset management. The initial starting point for this is going to be the Asset Management IQ tool that we developed, and this is a process by which you can benchmark where you are in your asset management practice. And there's a link that will take you to an interactive website. It will look, let me see, there it goes. It will look like this. And you have a couple different choices. You can, if you would rather fill it out on paper, you can click the printable PDF, and then you will get a PDF of all the questions. This one you would print out, and you would just circle the answer that you have for the questions. And the other one, the other option is to do it interactively on the computer. If you choose that option, you would pick each section. There are 6 sections, as you can see over on the right, and there's 5 questions for each of those 6 sections. So for example, is asset management terminology understood throughout the organization? So you would pick the answer that best describes your current situation. So if no one in the organization understands the terminology or knows asset management concepts, you would pick 0. If one person has that knowledge, you could pick 1, and so forth. So you give yourself whatever score best fits your particular utility, and I encourage you to be as honest with yourselves as possible, because this really helps set the baseline of where you are. So you really want to be brutally honest about, you know, where you stand in the practice. And if it's completely 0, that's all right. That just shows you that you have a lot of room to make improvement, and it's just showing you the starting point. So don't feel like you have to have a particular score at this point. You really just want to have whatever score is realistic for you. So you just go through and answer each of the questions. And you can see it starts to add up your score for the section and your cumulative score. Then you can either click next or you can hit section 2, whichever way you choose to do it. And you just go through these questions and just keep clicking the answers that make sense. And we'll go all the way to the end. At the end of the process, you can put in your name. Whoops, I have my caps lock on. And your utility name. I'll just put Southwest EFC. You can choose to print it letter or portrait. You can choose the paper size and portrait or landscape. And then you say download the results in a PDF. So it's just taking a moment to get my results. So now what it's going to do is it's going to tell me the results, the scores of each section and my cumulative score. And then it's going to actually give me the answers to each of my questions. So as you see, as I scroll down, you can see all of the answers. So then you have the opportunity to print that out, and you will have a copy of your results for this particular time that you did the IQ test. So that's kind of where we would like you to start with the initial process, is go take the IQ tool either on paper if you feel more comfortable that way, or on the computer, and then download the PDF to benchmark where you are in the asset management practice right now. And then what we'll do is have you bring those results to the first meeting, the first in-person meeting that we have. Any way that you want to present that is fine with us. There's no particular way you have to do it. It doesn't have to be a formal PowerPoint. But what we would like you to talk about is what's your overall score, what are your scores for each section, and then based on those scores, what do you feel like is your particular utility's greatest strength and greatest weaknesses with regards to asset management. And then you also have the possibility of having multiple people within your organization complete the asset management IQ tool, and we strongly encourage that. And then prior to the first meeting, get together with whoever actually fills out the IQ tool, talk about it, and see which questions you have similar answers and which questions maybe you have different answers, and try to come to resolution within your own organization of, maybe you picked a 1 and somebody else picked 2 for that question. Well, why did you guys, why did I choose a 1? Why did you choose 2? Talk about it, and then decide that, hey, the correct answer for us is probably 2 or probably 1. If you do have multiple people complete the IQ, that's another thing to present at the first meeting would be, what kind of discussions did you have? Did you have a strong agreement with the multiple people, or did you have, pretty varied answers? So that would be really interesting for the rest of the group to kind of know in terms of that particular process. So this would be kind of, initial starting point. And it shouldn't take you very long to complete the IQ. It's not meant to be a long, onerous process. It should just take you the time to read the questions and really think about what you want the answers to be, but it shouldn't be a real long, involved process. And with that, I think we're going to open it up to, as best we can, some questions, comments, concerns that you have. And then after that, after you've had a chance to ask us some questions and see where you are, we'll open up a poll question to see if people have chosen whether they want to participate in the process or not, to kind of get a feel for where we are. So I think we're ready to open it up to questions. You can do any of the things that Lisa talked about, where you can raise your hand, you could write questions into the question box, you could put in the question box that you would like to ask a question, and then we can unmute you. So whatever way best works for you, that would be great. So I don't know, Lisa or Don, have any questions come in?
I don't see any yet. Here comes one. We have Greg Merrigan asking, how many sessions and how far apart?
Okay, we're anticipating that there'll be 4 sessions right now, and it'll be one a month. So January, February, March, and April. So we're anticipating 1 session per month. Maybe not the most ideal way to do it, but we're facing a deadline with our funder that we need to be done by the end of April. So at this point, we're looking at 4 sessions, again, 1 per month. And so that's kind of the basic parameters at this point.
Okay, and Greg is also asking about the location of the sessions.
The location will be at the rural water offices, and Dawn, I think you know the location better than I do. I don't remember the city name.
In Madison.
Okay, in Madison, South Dakota.
And I think too, Heather, it would be good to let people know that we encourage as many people from each utility to participate as possible that would be on the asset management team from different areas within the utility. And that if that way, as you have a team, if one person can't make it, it doesn't jeopardize the outcome.
Yes, that's an excellent point. And in the past, we have had utilities come with multiple people. And in general, it can be a mix. Like you might have operators, you might have managers, you might have finance people. If you have a separation between people that work in the plant and people that work in the field, maybe one from each of those or even multiple from each of those. So yes, it is definitely encouraged to have, more than one person from a utility. It's nice to have, if you have 1 or 2 people that come to every single meeting, and then if you need to have, a, occasionally, like say if we're talking about funding, you might want to bring somebody from the funding department. Even if they can't make the other 3 meetings, it would be nice to have them at that meeting. But the same core people should try to come to all 4, and then you can add a person here or there, depending on the topic area. In general, our split in the past has been with the 4 meetings to do the criticality and inventory piece together, and then do 1 meeting on level of service, 1 on life cycle costing, and 1 on funding. So that's traditional. It doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but that's kind of how we've done it in the past if there's 4 meetings. So that's kind of the breakdown. And you may, like I said, you may want to bring a particular person extra to a meeting, but we do want to have the same core people, whether that's 2, 3, 4, 5, like however many you'd like to bring. Try to bring the same core people each time, and then add a person here or there for a topic.
Okay, and then we have another couple of questions. So if there are systems that express interest but we're not able to participate today, we are recording the session, and they can listen to and watch the webinar to learn more about it. We'd be happy to talk to them individually. If they would, if they want to give us a call, we can talk to them specifically, or email, whatever would work best. Heather just put our contact information up. So we can assist those systems as long as we can, to let them determine their interest, as long as we can do it in a timely manner. And then another question, how long will the sessions last? We're actually going to have a poll question here in just a few minutes to find out what each system would be most interested in, but it would be a full day. It just is dependent upon how the systems would like to handle that. So we'll address that in just a few minutes. And if you guys don't want to take time to try and type questions in, feel free to raise your hand. We'd be happy to talk to you directly.
if we don't have any more questions now, maybe we'll just go ahead and open those 2 poll questions, and then if anybody has any questions that come up as we're doing that, go ahead and either push your raise the hand button or type the question in, so either way. So Lisa, why don't we go ahead and do the last 2 poll questions.
Okay.
So this poll question would be asking you if you are planning to participate in the 4 workshop sessions, and this could be if you specifically aren't but your utility is, you can still select yes. And it's really a matter of, do you want to participate in this project, yes or no, or if you're still undecided. So if you could click on the correct answer for you and then hit the submit button, that would be great. Okay, so it looks like we still have a lot of people who are undecided. So if you have questions about, what kind of information would help you make a better decision, please type that in and we can help maybe provide some additional information about what the process is, what it's about. So please take a moment to do that if you can think of something that would help you in your decision-making process. And then finally put up the final poll question, if you would, Lisa. And the final poll question is asking about how you would prefer to do the training. As Dawn mentioned, it's basically a 1-day training each time. And so the question here is asking, would you rather have a 1-day workshop that's just a full day, all in the same day, or would you prefer to have 2 half-day workshops? These would be, back-to-back days, but we'd start the first day, basically at 1 and end at 5, and the second day we'd go 8:30 to 12. And then if you don't have a preference, there's an option there to select no preference. So would you rather have a full day of training, 2 half days, or you don't have a preference? Okay, so it looks like we actually have a pretty strong preference for the 1-day type workshop rather than 2 half days. Okay, did any additional questions come in?
Have the dates during the 4 months been set?
They have not yet been set. We will kind of based on responses in terms of who is interested in participating, we will send out the first, probably the first 2 dates, and then we'll kind of poll the group in terms of the last 2 dates. So we'll go ahead and, set some dates and send them out to you as soon as possible after this webinar to kind of let you know what's coming up. And we're going to try to avoid any major conflicts with other trainings in the state and that kind of thing, because we want to try to make it as easy as possible for people to attend.
All right. Then Dennis has a couple of questions for us that are more logistics, so maybe we could talk about those with Dennis after the webinar.
Okay. And one thing that I just want to comment about in general about the performance-based training is I've been doing asset management training for quite a number of years now, and I've done it literally all across the country in a lot of different settings, a lot of different ways. And my personal favorite way of doing this is performance-based training. I think it's the most effective way to do asset management training. So even if you've done other training and maybe it didn't meet all of your needs, I would encourage you to give this a try. I think it's a much more effective way of training. It gets you a chance to really dig into the concept and apply the techniques at your facility, and we'll give you just a simple activity. It's not meant to be that in the time between one training and the next, you have completely implemented something at your facility. We'll give you kind of a chance to try it out without overwhelming you. And it's just a great opportunity to kind of connect with peers who are trying to do the same thing. And it's amazing how much sharing takes place during the meeting and how people start to gain different techniques and tools and ideas from each other. So I think it is one of the best ways to actually learn asset management. So if you do have an interest, I would encourage you to really think long and hard about it, because I think it is a good opportunity for you to really have a chance to dig into asset management topics and really learn about the topics and kind of see what you can do at your own facility. And I think it's very, very different from traditional asset management training. So again, I strongly encourage you to give it a try if you think you would like to implement asset management at your particular system.
We haven't had any additional questions come in, Heather, so I think that we just need to communicate with Dennis and with us about your interest, and we will develop our workshop team and start setting up some dates for our first workshop in January.
Okay, well, we'll be back in touch with everybody. We appreciate your time today. If questions come up that you would like answered in order to find out more information, you have a specific concern you would like to talk about, please let us know. We're happy to talk to you further individually about your interest, about your concerns, your questions. And actually, if you would like to talk to anybody who participated in performance-based training in the past, I'm also happy to provide you some contact information, with a system or two that have been in it before, so that they can share their stories with you. So if that's something of interest, let Dawn or I know, and we can certainly get back to you with more information. But otherwise, I think we're done for this particular webinar, and we very much appreciate your time and interest thus far, and we hope to see as many of you as possible in January. And with that, I think we can end the webinar.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Thank you.